Hello, this is Yossi Fortuna from Siemens SRL, and this is the demo for the data transfer payment flow. In order for this flow to happen, as a requirement, the consumer needs to create an agreement using the smart contract manager, and based on that agreement, the transfer flow can be triggered. As a first step, the consumer needs to authenticate uh, on the data access API using the authentication endpoint. So I can do that by calling the authentication endpoint, uh, which gives me an access token. I can copy this access token and use it in the data access client, which runs on my local machine, and the data access API runs on a deployment node. So using that access token, I can log in, and after this, I can trigger the transfer flow. Uh, so the first step that the consumer needs to make is to ask for the active agreements based on the consumer public key. This will be forwarded to the data access API in the step 2. In the step 3, the data access will call the smart contract manager for the active agreements, and on the step 4, data access API will get the active agreements and will be received by the data access client. So we can do that by querying this endpoint using the consumer public key, and I can get all the agreements for that specific consumer. From this agreement, I need an offering ID, which will be used um, in the next step. On step 5, the consumer triggers the market fee payment, and this request is forwarded to the data access API. The data access API then makes a request based on the offering ID to the semantic engine to retrieve that specific offering, and with the price, uh, the fee found in the offering, uh, the data access API makes a request to the tokenizer on step 7 to pay that fee. The tokenizer will generate a raw transaction for that fee payment, and this raw transaction will be sent to the data access client. All these steps can be done just by uh, inserting the offering ID, um, and then the sender address and the provider address. For the sender and provider address, I have two identities, one for the consumer, one for the provider. So if I make that request, I get back a raw transaction. This raw transaction will be uh, copied like this, and will be uh, used by the consumer to sign this transaction on steps 10, and after that we can get a signed raw transaction. So if I do this and input my DID, which can be found uh, in the wallet, um, I can sign the transaction using the i3 Market wallet, and after I sign it, I get back the the signed raw transaction. I copy this signed raw transaction, and now I can make the step 13, which is to request data based on the signed raw transaction and on the agreement uh, that I used. So for that, I can go on this endpoint, uh, write down the data that I want, write down the agreement ID, and I can copy the signed raw transaction, execute this endpoint, and the data transfer will start using the non-repudiation protocol. So the data is transferred, the proofs are recorded, and after the data transfer is over, that raw transaction that I sent will be deployed by the tokenizer. This takes a little bit of time. Okay, I have a response that the file is imported and that the transaction object is received. After this, the provider or the consumer can go on the data access API and make a request based on the consumer DID to get more information about the transfer. So if I go here and input the DID and make the request, I get the information, all the information for each block that was transferred for that specific consumer, or all the blocks, all the proofs for that uh, transfer. Okay, so this was the demo for the data transfer payment flow. Thank you.